Hello, 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 everybody. Thank you for joining today's Test Studio webinar. I'm Andy Wheeland. I'll be hosting today's session. And along my side, I'll have Ramiro Milan as well, the Director of Testing here at Progress. Ramiro, can you hear me?
I certainly can, having some mute audio issues, but I'm here.
Awesome. Great, great. Thanks for joining in. So today we've got a lot to cover. As you can see, the title on the screen, this is a release webinar, so we'll be talking about new features and things. But first, let's start with a little bit of an introduction and a little bit of a reunion, right? This kind of harkens back to, gosh, I think, circa 2013 or something like that. Is that about right, Ramiro?
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a minute, as they say.
If you're not familiar, Ramiro and I have worked together for almost a decade and used to co-host many a webinar. This is the first one we've kind of brought each other or had the honor of kind of being back together again. So reunited, and it feels so good.
It really does. It really does.
So a couple housekeeping things real quick. Today's session is going to be recorded for everybody that's probably already asking in the chat. We do have chat and questions panel that you can ask questions along the way. We've got plenty of folks on to help answer those questions. And of course, the one in the middle there, you are muted throughout the call, so please feel free to be as loud as you'd like. And again, if you have those questions, feel free to drop those in at any point in the chat. And potentially we'll even be able to pick up on some of those as we get into things here. So moving on, the agenda for today, we're going to talk to Ramiro about the state of testing. I'm going to help with some slides along the way that kind of illustrate some of these concepts and things that we're seeing in the world of testing. And then we'll get more into what we've been working on, what our team has been diligently working on. And from the feedback of our users, our customers, we've got a really exciting set of features that have come out with Test Studio. And I think a big exciting feature that we'll talk about a little bit as well. We'll demo some stuff, and then any of those questions that you may have along the way, we may be able to pick some of those up at the end and talk to you guys about and answer those ad hoc essentially. Did you want to add anything, Ramiro, before we jump in?
No, I think you did pretty well, man. Really
awesome.
Good.
Thanks, buddy. Oh, and poll questions. We do like to ask a couple questions along the way, so at this point, we're going to jump into our first poll question. And the question is, what is your team's biggest software delivery challenge? So please feel free in the poll panel to make your vote. Let's see what people feel like is the biggest challenge in their testing. Or I'm sorry, software delivery. Cool, give you guys a minute to do that. Looks like some folks still trickling in. Thanks for joining in again. All of those of you that are jumping in now. We are just jumping into a poll here, and happy if you can contribute as well. We're going to wrap that poll up here in just a few more minutes. Looks like, really to no surprise, and this is kind of stuff we've seen as trending in different webinars that we've done and conversations we've had, of course. Looks like about 40% of the crowd is really focused on bugs slipping into production. That got the biggest batch of votes, and that's something that we hear a lot, right? Not having a sound sort of regression process to cover you when there's things that show up or slip in there. About 30% not able to keep up with regressions, and then it tails off from there. Unmanageable tests, automation tools are not good enough, and release slowdowns. So bugs slipping into production and not able to keep up with regressions. So any thoughts on that, Ramiro, from kind of the state of testing and things that you've heard and seen?
Yeah, I mean, bugs getting into production has been, from the get-go, something we just can't avoid, right? Software that has bugs. What's changed, though, in the world of how we deliver software, for the majority of the cases, we're not shipping CDs, we're not shipping disks anymore. So you can do over-the-air updates. This has led into a really interesting way of people developing where they think it's just okay to develop software and they can just fix it and patch it up later. Unfortunately, that just gives you bad experiences. And, as Gartner says, like the traditional testing focused quality approach fails to deliver innovation quickly and the lack of agility to quickly respond to defects, right? That's something that's happening to this day. I mean, you hear it even in the news, all these different banks that have bugs. A prime example for my own personal usage is my phone carrier. There was a rebate, let's say, and I couldn't see the button. No matter what, I was like, couldn't see the button, change the layout. I couldn't see the button. They're like, it's there. Well, it turns out that in Chrome, the button doesn't appear. If you know the stats, Chrome is the most used browser there is. So I had to use Safari on my Mac for actually to see that button. That sort of stuff, shouldn't be happening. And this is sort of stuff we want to curve. And this is where Test Studio can help, right? Because it's actually looking at the DOM and it's looking at the images and using those verifications. So you have multi-layers of verification to ensure that that code is actually working properly. So,
yeah, we're better than that these days, right? Or we should be. Our applications should be. Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, there's so many stories in the news that we hear of bugs slipping into production that can be, costly to your bottom line. I mean, and in some cases even dangerous, so bugs are not a joke. And I think the software world is really seeing that being a more important focus right now. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, let's think back of the unfortunate tragedies of the Boeing 737 MAX. I mean, that's a software problem, right? That was an education problem as well with pilots, but primarily a software problem. And, I recently got to fly in one of those and I was like, this is the safest plane. This is the safest plane in the sky, right? Right now, it's gotta be. So, it is important to test software. It is important to obviously deliver quality. That's why we're all here. But we understand that people are pushed to time, that endless, you have to release by feature or by date, right? And now it's being pushed by date. It's usually both, right? But it is, it is challenging. So yeah, this is a great quote.
Yeah, we got some other details coming out. We'll talk a little bit more about quality versus speed as well. And yeah, but I like this quote. I mean, you don't know what the problem is, right? The problem is that you don't know what's in the bottle, right? So going and pointing fingers at a particular bottleneck without actually testing and knowing where your problems are, how do you go about solving those, right? So great stuff. So yeah, to the point of speed versus quality, right? A really difficult decision that the teams make, and sometimes a rush to getting a release out is more important than potentially the quality. I mean, what do you think of that?
It's tough for me, right? First of all, being in the QA automation business, we have a tool that we want to have minimal defects, right? And we do have defects as well, and I take it very personally when we have these defects because it's impacting our customers, right? So for me, it's always concentrate on quality, but just like we have these bugs, I understand we have a commitment to release to our customers. We've announced it and we have to get things out the door. So quality for me is super important, but I understand the speed. And this is why you can bring in tools like Test Studio, bring Test Studio into your CI/CD environments, work with DevOps, right, to build a more reliable, so you necessarily don't have to lean right or lean left, right? You can kind of try to get the best of both worlds. But, for me, quality is always the most important.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head, and we're really working on making our tooling better so that you can get quality faster, right? And of course, with the pressures of today's high capacity, CI/CD type of world, this conundrum of no time because no automation because no time is not going anywhere. So you need ways to solve this, ways to keep up, ways to find shortcuts, but still not give up on that quality, right? So I think we've really done a lot of good things, great things really with Test Studio to make it even more user friendly, but also impact really the execution of tests and impact overall the pipeline of deployments so that testing can be done faster, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, for us, our test maintenance, right, is fantastic because of the way that we record. Using our fine logic, as I mentioned earlier, if that button moves around, if that button doesn't appear, like we can actually test for those scenarios. There are a lot of tools out there. You folks probably know some of them that will test only images. Some are using XPath, which is not exactly the most reliable. It works. It's very brittle. So with our fine logic, it helps. So you can create the tests, right? So you have these tests that are very robust. When you implement them into an environment, if that environment changes, modifies, or if there's a request to move the button to the top screen versus the left, it's still going to work, right? Or at least if you get a failure, it's going to tell you, well, we think it's here. It's for some reason it has move. It's the same code, but you can pause it on that run. And then again, from the maintenance perspective, if you update that element, it just updates it through all your different tests. So we give you that ability to do that very well with our product. That's one of the reasons why a lot of our customers love it. It's because they can actually scale and actually build those, that regression and get as much coverage. It's almost impossible to get to 100%, but they can get, as close as they can with it.
Yeah, and we have this weird concept in Test Studio of old tests. It's funny to say that because with a lot of those other tools, when you have a release, you have tests that just break and you have to rebuild those tests. You don't build any history or reliability on those tests. Whereas with ours, the tests can be easily updated, easily evolved, and can stand up longer even before they break over time with image backup capabilities, with all of the, with the find logic itself to begin with. Those things that we've done to make our tests more robust, more bulletproof, and essentially live long lives, right? I love coaching our customers on taking a new feature test and graduating it to a regression test list. Eventually, essentially, I take a new feature, I want to make sure it's all working right. We'll have tests around that, functional testing and so forth, UI-based functional testing, integration testing and so forth. And hopefully things go well and I can graduate those tests into my regression test list, which is just going to get bigger and bigger and cover more and more of my application while I focus on those new functional tests. And ideally, yes, things are going to break, but it's having the tooling and ability to fix them, evolve them, keep them going. And again, having old tests, it's just a new concept. And I really love the fact that we can brag about having old tests.
Yeah. And I hope you all put in all your tests with your source code as well. This is kind of a tip that I try to give people all the time is make sure all these tests are being stored with all that old code. You want it all together in one single spot because it actually is part of your code. So.
Yeah, it's a great point. And having those integrations directly into the current tools and processes that the teams are using, whether that's Azure or Git or Jira. I mean, we'll jump in and see some of the integration capabilities on the demo side of things. But yeah, great insights. So yeah, and then a little bit more here, I guess, about the accessibility of Test Studio, where anybody can kind of work with it. We have, if there's folks in the audience that aren't familiar, a standalone environment as well as a Visual Studio plugin for Test Studio, as well as a runtime license. And these are all components that fit, as these building blocks do, fit into the pipeline and fit into the different people that use the application. So we really can brag about having the ability to take manual testing and accelerate it to a point where it can keep up with CI/CD and even run headlessly, right? So I'll let Ramiro do some more bragging, I guess.
No, that was perfect. For me, I love that there's zero support for modern frameworks. Before there was Angular, we were ready for Angular. Before there was React, we were ready for it. Before there was this, few years ago, like 5-7 years ago, was Knockout. You folks might remember Knockout JS. It was the hottest thing that existed, and it kind of fizzled. I'm not sure how much it's still being actively used, if at all. But we were ready for that. So, to me, this is super important because whatever web technology comes out in the future, we'll be ready for it right from day zero. Which is nice, right? And nice to know that you're future-proof with this particular product. Makes me happy.
For sure. Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the makeup of Test Studio. What it covers, what it can do. As you can see, lots of stuff in here. There's a huge theme in Test Studio of reuse, and I love the fact that we can create something and reuse it in different ways. Run as you can see, a load load test essentially with the functional tests that we've built and things like that. So maybe talk us through a couple of these feature things that we see here.
Yeah, so I mean, our code list, C# and VB test. This is a very interesting component, right? Our tool is designed to be used, by somebody who is a manual QA coming into automation, all the way to a very talented developer who understands C#. I truly believe that our framework is amazing. If you're a C# developer, it's fantastic. But the in between, right? You may have your technical, what we call SDET, right? An SDET developer who's a tester. May be able to take a lot of advantage and be able to actually get automation and obviously code to it, or have this great ecosystem where you have the BA or even manual QA create the test and have that developer actually take it further with code. So to me, it's very powerful. It's good synergy between the org. It's not just throwing it over the wall. It's just a good collaboration. For me, functional cross-browser web and WPF test automation, best in class. For us, it's always been, focused on web UI automation. We've had great success with it. As I mentioned, we always have day zero support. The way that we handle it gives us that capability. Our, patent pending element location based in dominant imaging. This is very, very interesting technology. Obviously, it's patent pending. We're waiting for this patent. It's been like 2.5, 3 years now. It takes a while. COVID didn't help slow that process down, but no, this is a great technology that's unique to us. So one of the features that were released when I first took on this position a few years back was responsive app, right? As I mentioned earlier, applications are changing. We don't have to ship CDs. And in fact, your applications, if they're web deliverable, can be handled on a device that's a 4.5-inch screen, 7-inch screen, whatever those big Samsung devices are, a tablet, a laptop, high resolution, low resolution. So that's constantly changing what's on there. And that form factor is going to dictate, the user experience, right? You can't have an Amazon .com page on your phone. It just doesn't work, right? So it has to be adapted for touch, and you have to make those decisions as to what you're going to show those users, what they're going to consume at that sort of fidelity, right? So we have that built right into, so you can test those different scenarios, which is almost endlessly. You can change the screen size so as much as you want to. To me, CI/CD.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, even custom, exactly. CI/CD integration. This is Andy loves for the past decade. Andy's been setting up Jenkins servers and Hudson's and tearing them down and working with CI/CD to really show the value of it. This is an area that a lot of customers want to get to. I'm sure a lot of you folks are already. Some that are inspiring to get to, and it takes a little bit of effort to actually build those pipe in. Things like Azure have done it better to help with that, create a nice pipe for that. But we've had that integration again from the beginning, so it's very easy for us to work with all these different CI/CD servers that exist out there. For me, it's important. I think the way that now software is being delivered, the average life of an application on App Store is like 5 days, 6 days. It's really important to be able to have this continuous pipe that you can just go ahead and hit F5 when you build or build out, and at the end it spits out a working piece of software that's tested, right? Data-driven testing to me is very important. Again, all these things are important, but for me, this was the one that I love the most. Being able to drive your tests with data will give you a better real life scenario, right? You can actually change the output of your application by simply throwing different data at it, whether it be users, account numbers. You can even drive information like grids. Everyone loves grids, and have that dynamically change based on data that's coming. And we can integrate to a flat file. We can tie directly into a database. So that's really, really cool. Remote test scheduling and execution is good. That way you don't have to take up your machine running a 2-3 hour regression, let's say, or having to run tests overnight. You don't have to worry about that. You can put that out into your test farm and work through that. So we offer a very cost-effective licensing model for that. So it's very easy to set up. You can go ahead and run your tests on these different scenarios because we're physically, it's like a black box, right? So we're physically providing input to receive that output. We want to try on different scenarios, different machines, etc. So that gives us the capability, and then we can collect all that information and bring those back into our executive dashboard, so you can go ahead and review, what's actually happening in those different test environments. So these are all great features that come together to make automated testing just work very simple.
That's great.
That's all I had. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I love it. You know, we can have tests running while we're sleeping, and we can easily see the health of our application at a glance with things like the executive dashboard. I did a little sneak peek of that on Monday in our debugging live stream with Ed Charbonneau, and got a lot of great interest in the executive dashboard. So maybe we'll have to show you a little bit of that later as well. So as far as technologies, you know, here you can see, I mean, pretty much we work with anything in the web, right? Anything web-based we can do automation for. We've, as of this release, added the support for the latest .NET framework, and with 5 and 6 preview, and the support for WPF modern .NET applications. So anything you would like to throw in here as far as what we do and what we support from a technology standpoint?
No, I mean, I think we've covered it well here. There's a lot of different logos here. The other thing I would add, if it's a progress control for WPF, control for what we call Ajax, but web forms, or a component for our Kendos, we have added translators. These add additional value. Maybe if we have like 30 seconds, we can show it during the live demo, but that basically goes into these components and gives you more server-side level information that you wouldn't know on the surface. So that gives you even better depth into your testing, that additional verification or additional steps that could give you a more robust test.
Yeah, and being a .NET based framework, we're not just stuck with .NET based apps, right? As you can see, there's lots of JavaScript here. We can execute JavaScript commands as well. I mean, there's really not a limit. That's what we say. You know, really anything in the web we can test. And typically we don't need to have code involved. You know, we typically see 80 to 90% of the tests can be done codelessly and managed and maintained that way over the life of the test as well. So that's a good segue into this next slide, which is everybody has a seat at the table. And I think this is really critical for what we've tried to build with Test Studio and the ecosystem of Test Studio, is that you can be any one of these people and have a job to do with testing. And of course, these are the people that are already doing testing today. What Test Studio allows you to do, as you can see at the top, is often what a lot of customers come to us for. They come to us with technical debt from testing. They come to us with slow releases or extra cycles that they have to have testing only, right? Or testing sprints. Those things shouldn't really exist. Testing should be able to keep up so that it happens in every sprint. And so really giving you the ability to move the needle left here and get more and more to a low code automation where a non-technical user can actually own the test and maintain the test for the life of it. I mean, it's really, there's just nothing else that I know of that can reach this level of not even integration, but collaboration, because having that ability to collaborate between development and QA, and of course bringing in the executive dashboard for the ease of accessing the result data as well. All right, well, I promised just a couple more slides and then we'll jump into some demo stuff here. So, but a great part of Test Studio, really where everybody has a seat at the table. So shift left, Ramiro, what are we talking about here? What is shift left?
Well, we want to ensure that we can do, test early and test often, right? We want to make sure that we're constantly testing. With something like CI/CD, we have the capability to, like I said, hit F5, and on the other side, you get an application that's fully tested and working. That's the beauty. That's the what we want to all get to. To get there, it takes a little bit of effort. It takes a little bit of tweaking, but you can get there. Tools like Test Studio will help you, will improve that process. So as we mentioned earlier, we have a very robust with our element repository where, if that application changes, all you do is change it in one area and it changes all your tests that are associated with that particular, element that you're working with. So that will help instead of going and having to re-record every single step or every single test in order to fix your CI/CD pipe. So that's going to really help speed the process up, get software to your customers that is working faster and it's more reliable, and remove the headaches. And overall, that's a benefit for the business, benefit for the development team. They can focus on the next and latest and greatest thing, and obviously for the QA team, that'll help them as well, because they're most likely supporting multiple developers and even sometimes multiple teams. So that can be a bit of a challenge too.
So yeah, the shift left idea, you know, the idea basically of, you know, early and often, I mean, we keep hearing it. Testing is definitely becoming more and more important. You mentioned it's not something that happens overnight, right? So, I mean, give us a sense. Do we have anything for customers that, you know, are looking at this like, man, it's going to take some work? It is, but you know, what could you say, I guess, about things we may be able to do to help?
I mean, from our perspective, we can help with, well, first of all, anyone who has an active test studio license and anyone who is trialing currently. If you're not, you should definitely trial. You will have access to a virtual classroom training, right? That is a great source of material. That goes really even beyond just the product, like click here, click there for this. It actually talks about some of this functionality, how to get you, you know, to shift left, if you will, right? So that gives you the beginning. Beyond that, you know, obviously, folks, if you've used any of the Telerik controls and components, know that we have award-winning support. That's the same here for Test Studio. We have an amazing, talented, yeah, it's just amazing. Beyond that, you have access to people like myself, to Andy, to Ilion, who's our product manager. So those are the things that we can do to support you. Now, what I would tell you in order to get to here, because you can look at it as I was climbing a mountain, really, like you really want to ensure that when you do your test, the best advice is build it into compartments, right? Don't have massive tests that are 50, 60 steps long. And more importantly, add your verifications. You know, if you take a step forward, take one step back to just double check to make sure that, you know, everything's working correctly. This helps to build these tests that are going to become very rigid and be able to scale. And that is going to make this implementation of testing often, testing early, much, much better, because you know, you won't have to worry about chasing a step that happened in the beginning when you're 100 steps in to see what might have happened. So that's kind of my short advice. I can talk this forever, but we don't have forever.
Yeah,
we have another hour. Yeah,
we'll keep going, but yeah, and beyond our support, as you mentioned, and the tooling that we give in the virtual classroom, you know, we do help a lot of our customers too with professional services. We do have that. We do a lot of work with our customers, and you know, that's an option too. You know, if you really want to make sure you're doing it right, yeah, I would suggest, you know, at least get some training done. If not, you know, certainly take a look, have that conversation with us about what we offer from a pro services standpoint as well.
yeah.
Okay, what's new? So 2021 R2 Test Studio was released, what, a couple weeks ago, was it? And what did we do? What did we actually release with this one?
Ooh, some good stuff. This was very customer focused, this release. They all are, but sometimes we introduce new features, but this one, all the features that we introduced were for our customers, listening to them. Simplified test debugging, right? So what we wanted to do was build a new step failure details interface that makes it just much easier to figure out what actually happened, what recommendations we can give you in order to assist you with what may have happened, and then fix any test failures that may arise. As well, as you folks already know, .NET was forked at version 5. So we've added that support so that if you are using our WPF or using Test Studio to test WPF, your test will be supported for .NET 6 and 5, right? Which 6 is in preview still. So you'll have that capability already built in, again, day 0. And then we didn't add it. We've always supported HTML frames. But what we did is we improved the identification logic, right? So that we have better test automation. I mean, if you're using any ERP, if you're using Blackboard, if you're using PeopleSoft, if it's SAP, if it's fill in the blank, or you're even your own, or if you have an old Oracle Frames applications, they have frames, right? And these things are going to stick around for another 30 or 40, 50 years, and they're always going to be around. So we wanted to ensure that we just really turned our frame support up to 11. And that will give you much better testing because a lot of our customers are using frames.
Perfect. Awesome. And I think we're going to break down that a little bit more. But first, our second poll question is going to come up. Again, please participate in our poll. It really helps us better understand who's out there, because obviously we don't get the chance to see you and meet you. And hopefully here in the near future, we'll be able to get back in person with folks and see you at some trade shows and things like that. But definitely jump into the poll question. The question being, how do you handle flaky tests? Well, I think we've got some good options, but I'd love to see what people are doing now that may not have Test Studio. But it looks like the poll question's coming up pretty strong for the 58, almost 60%. Try to determine the failure cause and fix it. What is that? It's actually cut off there. Let me just fix the test. Okay, gotcha. And so the majority of folks are trying to figure out the failure and fix it. And then a tie, 17% for I fix them on the go and I put them in a separate test suite and deal with them later. Yikes. So again, yeah, I really think that goes back to how Test Studio has the maintenance capabilities built in. Really makes it easy for folks to be able to modify those tests instead of push them aside, right? If it's a fast process to be able to fix something that's broken, then you can hopefully just fix it and move on, right? And rather than have to put it aside for later. Great. All right, so we're going to dive more into these new features. So step failure details, and when we talk about step failure details, we'll kind of parlay back and forth here between the presentation and some demonstration. So step failure details here, really the idea, stop adding technical debt with broken scripts, right? Again, a lot of folks come to us and they're tired and they're weary because they've got spaghetti code testing that's breaking and hard to fix and just adding to more pain in the whole delivery process. Oops, let me make sure the screen is up here. Sorry about that, y'all. Let me know if that is showing.
There we go.
Perfect. All right, so again, step failure details, important data that comes from a failing test. Let's sum it up like that. But again, having the ability to, fix things quicker, fix things on the fly rather than put them off, or, again, it just gives me, it haunts me at night in nightmares when people say, when I hear the words testing sprint, it's like, what? Wait, what? But I know that happens. I know that's a reality out there. Minimize the inefficient troubleshooting, make it quick and easy, get back on track faster, spend less time dealing with those flaky tests, and really just not having flaky tests to begin with. So I'm going to take you over to Test Studio. You may look at this and be like, what are we looking at? If you haven't got the memo, we've had dark mode, dark theme for a while now. I've migrated over to it, and I can also do a little bit of zooming as well if we need to, if it's tough for folks to see. So definitely let us know if it's hard to read things or hard to see things. Be happy to help. But here we are in Test Studio, the standalone environment. This is a typical looking test. This is a login type of test, very, very common type of test, right? Login tests are foundational. To Ramiro's point earlier, this becomes a module, right? And we can build these building blocks of tests where I go call the login test, and then I call the update test, and then I call the delete test and things like that. So making these kind of easy building blocks of test, reliable, reusable tests, and that way you've got a lot of ease of maintenance going on. So let's take a quick look at this test. I'm going to just jump in and break it. So I'm going to actually just disable this test step. And again, if you're just getting a first look at Test Studio, yes, this is what our tests look like. I get the question sometimes, where's the code? Well, we're not just a code generator. You could certainly convert things to code. You can script everything if you wanted to. And there are customers of ours that do that. But one of the biggest benefits to this product is how much you can do without code, which invites more people to the table, right? Allowing non-technical manual testers who know the application and know the customers and know the workflows and everything the best, bring them into the process give them a tool that allows them to create and maintain these things. So when you look at our test steps, there's a lot of functionality that's surfaced through checkboxes, through settings here, and even more properties on the right. Things like data driving our test steps or modifying which browsers they run against. I like to point this out because our tests default to run against all browsers. Every test step you record is defaulted to run against all browsers, although we have the ability to deviate from that. But the point being, our tests are cross-browser compatible. You don't have to have a different test for different browsers. So that's something really important to highlight. And I'll go ahead and just execute a test here for you real quick and show you some of these new functions. By the way, while we're here, you do see this little Chrome H. No, we didn't mess up by putting Chrome in there twice. That is Chrome headless. So again, if you missed the memo, we do have headless execution of your test now as well that runs 3 times faster typically than the headed testing. Great for putting it into the CI/CD pipeline. We'll do a quick execution. And it looks like there is a bit of a small text here, but for now we're going to jump into execution. You can see this is just executing a quick login. There's username, there's password. Now here's the step I turned off. I told it not to click the login. So we're actually going to see the timeout down here. This is our little visual debugger. It's going through the timeout, still looking for the sign out link. It's an important verification to have in a login test, because that proves whether or not we actually got logged in or not. So here at the point that it fails, it comes back, and here's where we see this new feature set, really. I mean, a lot of great information and capabilities that were added in. Ramiro, I want to give you a chance to weigh in. What do you have to tell us on the new step failure details that we're seeing here?
Yeah. So this to us was something that we've been looking to accomplish for a long, long time, right? One of the beauties is we have our own in-house UX and UI on our team. So she's incredibly talented, has a PhD in human interaction with machines. So she was looking at how we can do this in a way that we don't really have to bring you through a wizard, right? That's the last thing we want to do, is take you away from what you're doing, have you stab through an entire wizard, but present all the information that you want to in one area of the product, right? And call attention to it. So what I love about this view is if you look at the suggestions on the bottom, right, it's actually saying, okay, well, you may want to go ahead and update that find logic, right? Or, you may want to look at actually annotating those runs so you can actually figure out and get a screenshot as to where it was failing or why it may be failing, right? And then you have obviously alternative solutions. Then the best part is that we give you some really high definition images. So if you want to expand the images on the right there,
yep.
You can actually see the results. Yep.
Over here.
Oh, you have
there
it.
we go.
Yeah, here we go. So you have these high definition images to actually figure out exactly what that issue was. So it was looking for the sign out down there. It's highlighting, hey, I was looking for this piece of code, this piece of text, this piece of, or this image, and it goes down the list, but I could not locate it. So I did my darnest to find it, and I could not get there, and that's why we failed, right? And then it also gives you, the actual state at the time of failure, what it looks like. So it's really, really a really good way to fix what's actually happened, debug them, and then obviously make those corrections, and then have a successful test.
Great. Yeah, so let's take a look at some of these suggestions here real quick. I love this one, annotated run, right? So we'll click this button. It's going to let me go right back into executing. I'm picking on Chromium Edge, by the way, which we had 0-day support for. But I do a lot of executing and testing in Chromium Edge. And of course, since they are cross-browser, you can go run them on any of the browsers there that you have an option for. So this time we've got a little bit slower execution, and you can see the red yellow highlighting, right? So it was highlighting the fields. You saw the typing going on. That's what we call simulated real typing. Very useful for async controls that are making calls to the server. But simulated real typing, and as you could see there, it still failed. But at that time, it gave me more insights. That annotated run turns on that highlighter, goes a little slower, so you can really inspect what's happening and see. We didn't see it highlight or click the login button, right? At the end of the day, that's what's the culprit here. But let's diagnose things a little bit further. So failed for step 6. I also love the fact that this big red banner here, and the fact that you can even filter down to just the failing steps. Now, some people might see this as like, what did you do that for? Well, you could have a long test, you just want to jump to the failure, but you also have the ability to use the continue on failure option. That's this column right here, which you can also toggle through the right click menu. But you can use that continue on failure option, which is great for cosmetic verifications and things like that. You want to check the color, you want to check the font, things like that that may not be critical functional failures, but you still want to know about them. You still want to gather the data on them. And you may have essentially more than one failure from a single test when you're using those functions. So being able to filter out the passing, we love, of course, all the green. We love seeing the green check marks. But at the end of the day, we're here to find bugs. We're here to find the failures, and that helps us really get the passing stuff out of the way, focus on the failure. So I love that feature. Glad that that came into fruition there. And then the log files, the page DOM as well, all that data. Oops, and let me actually rerun this real quick, or sorry, just refocus on the right step here. So we can get back to that data there. This tells me which step failed. It was looking for the sign out link. Again, I need to have a verification at the end of this test to make sure I succeed at logging in, right? That's why I'm looking for sign out, not to click it, just to make sure I actually succeeded at logging in. So I'll show you how those verifications get added if you're not familiar with that here in a moment. But before we do, let's do a little more diagnosis here. We see that there's a find logic, unable to locate an element with find logic. It was looking for it based off of the text content and the tag name. So it's a very common combination that Test Studio will use, but I like to point the fact out that you can modify the find logic. You can modify the find logic strategy for the whole project, and you can customize it even at an element level too. Before I do that, I just want to show you that the page DOM is here too. So this is data that's oftentimes maybe not as useful for the non-technical users, but a great way for the developers to see what was going on behind the scenes when that failure occurred, and inspect the DOM essentially. Now, you can copy this data to clipboard. You can export it to zip file. There is a complete test log here too, with the browser and version, the failure info, the timing as well. Lots and lots of data here. This really represents the steps to reproduce the issue, and this can easily be communicated. If we have found a bug in the application, even as a non-technical user, I have a bridge to provide this feedback. I have a feedback loop directly to my dev team, because Test Studio can integrate into that bug tracking system, whether it's TFS or Azure or Jira in this case. You can connect in. I can basically hit submit. This will communicate to my team and include all of the failure details. So they're going to get the image files, the log files, the page DOM, all of that stuff gets communicated. This really shortcuts the conversation between development and QA. If you think about those conversations, what'd you do? What'd you expect to happen? What browser version? What machine were you on? All that data is already in here, and now it's actually in my Azure instance too. So my developers have it, they can view it, review it, and triage it, and hopefully fix that bug for me, right? So that ability to easily communicate all of that data and really creating that feedback loop is important to keeping up with testing pace, right? That pace of CI/CD. This is a key to making that work well for you. Let me get back to this resolve failure, which will also take us to this update find logic. So I'll take this route, but both of those should get me to the same thing. By the way, resolve failure is there because the test is sometimes at fault, right? So resolve failure takes that approach that if the test is at fault, what do we need to look at in this test to potentially fix it? Since the failure was a failure to locate an element, it gives us the chance to update the broken element. So this is the combination of filters that are being used to locate that particular element right now. Maybe the team changed it from sign out to log out. I can easily just modify that right here, or change a operator if I need to make it stronger or weaker there. And we can from here even go in and connect up to the live UI find it in the live version, and maybe we'll just have it execute. Let's see, I don't have one open now, so I'm just going to choose a step and have it execute to that step. So we're going to go to this one here and select, and this is going to spin up the browser. It's a great way to jump into a troubleshooting mode directly from those suggestions. So again, as Ramiro pointed out, we don't want to put you through a wizard necessarily where you're kind of locked in, but here's one path that you may be able to go through that will get you to that particular element. Oops, it looks like I had an edge update, sorry. Bad timing for that, but over here on this tab, we are in the recorder and we can start to troubleshoot and things like that. So let me, oops, try to get that extra window out of the way there. So Test Studio just executed and attached the recording toolbar. This is our recording toolbar. And as I mentioned earlier, I do want to point out a couple features to this recording toolbar. One being the second button right here. This is our element highlighter that's going to allow us to highlight elements and in quick steps, for example, jump in and add some steps like, does this show up? Is it working right? Is it enabled? Do we need to wait for it to show up? Even things like extraction where we can pull data from the live UI as well. So lots of stuff to talk about. I know we've got more to cover here, but I wanted to show that off. And before we jump out of this particular item, we'll go back and see how our element looks now. Whoops. There we go. Doing it on one screen. Of course, I would suggest using a dual monitor if you're working with Test Studio, so you can have one screen with the browser and one screen with the tools, and that will even highlight elements for you and make it even easier to work with. So this would allow me to update that element. Again, we know the cause here was because I turned this button off. Let's turn that back on, and I'll actually have it go run from this right-click option from here. So when you're in a live record mode, you get the ability to run a step at a time, a group of steps, or let's say we just fixed the glitch, and we'll see if the test will execute from this step. And it will keep us in this live record mode. So this is some of those maintenance tools that you can get into with Test Studio. Executing on the fly, recording and editing on the fly. And one more thing before I go back to the next feature. Waiting for this app to finish logging in here. There we go. All right, well, it'll keep, there we go. Oops, I must have interfered. Okay, we'll run this one step by itself then. We'll just have it run there. All right, so the app is loading up there. Okay, but back to the matter at hand. So we passed that test at this point. But the next feature that we were going to talk about, coming back to our presentation mode here, and oops, so it looks like a couple quotes, but we're a couple data points before we get to that. Let's see, we also have the step failure details here. We just showed you that. So getting into cutting the deployment time with those details, as you can see, the improvement there for the interface, the improvement for the screenshots, the guidance through fixing the issues with suggestions and so forth. Really just a great improvement overall from the team and what we've been able to do there. So I know it's actually time for, I jumped into the demo there a little bit early, but it's time for our third poll question. So let's go ahead and turn it over to the poll and give y'all a bit of a chance here to answer another question. Ramiro, I want to give you a chance too if you wanted to add anything into to the new failure details or suggestions.
No, I mean, to me, yeah, it's fantastic. My headset died in the middle. I had to swap to my AirPods. So sorry about that, folks. So, you know, it's fantastic improvement and almost a whole new feature to what we already offering. So already took an already good product and just made it way better. So you folks are going to have a good time with it. It's going to help you tremendously fix your test and get you to, you know, even higher and better places with your test plans. Very exciting.
Awesome. And this last poll question, what is the biggest challenge you face in testing? And flaky tests, inefficient automation, low value manual testing. It's all very close. Let's see who's going to win. Looks like it's leveling out a little bit. Very close, very close. We're only seeing 7% on technical debt added by tests. So that's a surprise to me. I actually expected that to be a bit higher. And of course, as I say that, it ticks up a bit. But yeah, it looks like the poll overall, about a quarter of folks saying flaky automated test, a quarter saying inefficient automated testing, another quarter saying low value manual testing, and then 18 and 10% to the extensive test troubleshooting and technical debt added. So it looks like lots of folks are either automating with issues or still doing manual testing and not getting a lot of value out of that. So hopefully you see today what we've done with Test Studio, and really to allow for the traditional manual testing to be really supersized and made a lot more fast and powerful with what Test Studio can do. Okay, so on to the next topic, the WPF desktop automation in Test Studio. Really nothing really to show off here. I mean, it's really more of a thing that's in the market and keeping up with what the market's doing, right? With the new release of .NET 5 and .NET 6 preview, wanted to make sure we are again on top of staying up to date with the technology out there. Anything else, I guess, Ramiro, on WPF support?
It's quite simple, right? If your test break after update, then we didn't do our job correctly, right? So you shouldn't feel any pain. Everything should just continue working the way it is. And as you migrate your applications over to .NET 5 and then maybe preview on 6, everything should just continue to work perfectly fine on Test Studio.
Yeah, I'd have to say WPF is trending right now. I think the new .NET Core advancements with WPF have really brought it into another level. Like, people that were holding back on modernizing their applications seem to be doing it now. They seem to be going towards WPF pretty frequently. We're seeing that trend in the sales engineering area, because of course we do have all sorts of products, WPF being one of those, WPF controls, of course. And actually, it may be good just to show you, as Ramiro alluded to earlier, in our project settings where we have a lot of stuff that's in the background that's doing its job automatically, right? So the WPF control sets that are here, they're all on, but we work with the generic third-party custom controls as well. But of course, when it comes to our own, we have our set of translators. And to expand even further on the HTML side, again, we're not just leaving jQuery and JavaScript out of the conversation. We of course fully support all of our Kendo controls, Angular as well, and of course the newest Blazor controls too. So again, these are here, they're in the background, they're doing their job. And what these do for us is they really guarantee that we can work with that control. We hear a lot of times, with these complex controls, it's difficult for testing tools to work with them. Well, we have an added advantage, right? Since these are our controls. But the great thing is we do work with any third-party controls too. Where you see those translators the most is really within the, let me get that browser out of the way, is really within the application. So I'm just going to dive in one more time using that run to here, right? Run to here functionality with the right-click menu to get to that moment in time in the test and in the application, and I'll show you where those translators will show up. Now, I know I'm using a web application as an example, but the same is true for WPF. Obviously, instead of launching a website or launching a browser and going to a website, we are launching an application and going into that application with WPF. But here we are back in this application. Again, I'm just going to toggle on this element highlighter, and you're going to start to see, if I pause here for a moment, some different layering, some different kind of highlighting. And let's see, where's a good example of, we'll jump over here to this one. Nice grid, right? Complex grid controls. And you can see that purple kicking in. As Test Studio's translators are kicking in and they're seeing, hey, this is a Telerik Blazor grid data cell. What can we do with that? Well, we can verify its position or selectability. whether it's opened or closed, essentially. We've got at the data grid item level, the row level, we can look at indexing if we need to. I love though in Test Studio how we don't need to use indexes. But here in HTML table, this is a generic layer. You still have column and row counts, right? And visible and not visible types of verifications. If we go to the Telerik Blazor grid, you can see column and row count, but also is it groupable? Is it grouped currently? Is it sorting ascended or descended? Like these are bonus verification options that come to us by way of those translators. So yes, we can work with all web technologies, but we work supremely well with our own. We give you bonus features when it comes to using our own. So lots of great things in this element highlighter and the capabilities that are here. I could talk about it all day, but unfortunately we have to move on. So on to the next WPF again, it looks like. And of course, still supporting the legacy versions of those two. And then we come to the extended iframe support. I know we're coming down to just the last few minutes. Ramiro talked about this earlier, but basically improve the fine logic, improve the execution ability and the reliability of working with applications that use frames. We basically said, you know what, it's not going away. We can do a better job at this. And our guys came to bat. They did a great job. You know, overall, an amazing release with some things that we're really excited to share, and also delivered by a really amazing company. You know, Progress has done a great job with allowing us to do what we do and team together. And as I mentioned, we provide a world-class support system. We provide pro services as well. We've got these types of interactions with online and hopefully in person again soon that we do as well. So with that, a couple more minutes, we may be able to take some questions. What do you think, Ramiro? Is there anything that you've seen that you want to take a look at or answer here live?
Yeah, there's one question that has come up regarding specifically with our fine logic, right? So the question was centered around Selenium and XPath, and you know, can we use XPath? And the answer is yes, we do have XPath capability, but that's kind of, I don't want to say bottom of the barrel, but it's sort of the last like effort for Test Studio. It's actually using many more abstraction layers to figure out whether the test broke or to find those elements. That was one of the questions that I liked. I don't know if there's any other ones in there, Indy.
Let's see. Does it work in websites with backend and front end on different languages such as Portuguese and Spanish? So that's a great question that comes up a lot. Test Studio, the interface itself is offered in English as an interface, but you can do multi-language testing. And I think going to where Ramiro was talking about data driving a test, you have the ability to bring data into your project, whether that's a live database or a flat file. You can then associate that in the binding properties directly to a field where you're essentially attaching a column to a field. And I have many instances. I actually have a online tutorial, maybe an older video, but a tutorial on multi-language testing with Test Studio by using data-driven tests, essentially running the same test in English, the same test again in Spanish, the same test in Portuguese or whatever it might be. So again, a lot of reuse that comes from that. So see if I can grab a link to that and throw it in the chat for folks that are interested in seeing that tutorial.
Yeah, we even go beyond like UTF characters, right? So we can support different languages, like Asian-based languages or characters. We can support that as well. So we're not just tied to Latin-based character, you know, alphabets that we see that are more common.
Great. Any other last questions? I know we're right at the hour, so I want to keep it efficient. But
and if we don't get to folks, we'll do our best to answer everyone else's questions right after the webinar. If not, we'll reach out directly.
Awesome. Well, hey, I want to send a big shout out and thanks to our team internally, and a welcome back to a couple folks too that been away on vacation or you know, getting better. And we're happy that our team was able to help out, and even if they're in the background. I want to say thanks to you, and thanks to the developers who worked really hard, tirelessly, and worked really closely with our customers on this release and future releases too. So I think we're seeing a new age for Test Studio, and I want to say thank you to everybody that's attended today, or if you're watching this in video mode later on, thanks for tuning in. Go try out the new capabilities. Go get the download. If you haven't updated, update. Or if you haven't tried it yet, trial it, right? So come check it out and let us know how else we can help you. And lastly, thank you, Ramiro, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Let's tune in next time. Maybe we'll see you back again in a future
I think
webinar.
so. I think I'll be back. Yeah, and to echo Andy, thanks to everyone, including our team, who's worked tirelessly, tremendously hard to get these releases out. Thanks to our customers for believing us and trusting us to help them. And then, if you're not a customer, we hope that you are. But what I wanted to kind of finish off is that think of us not just as a product company. We're really here to partner with you. We, beyond the product, we have, the free, very comprehensive training. We have paid training on professional services. So think of it as your testing platform, if you will, right? It's not just the product, but it's a whole team of people here to help you. And so we look forward to working with you. If we're working with you already, we look forward to continue working with you. So thanks, folks. I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun today. Can't wait to be back.
Awesome. Great. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. We're signing off for today, and thanks for watching.